Carter,
Yes.
you want to do the honors?
Of course,
Dude.
Welcome to another episode of the Pitcast, my friends. We are broadcasting from our respective homes. Of course, it's me, Carter, the MTG Meatball, joined by my dear friend Matt Moss. And we have Ian Blank and David Velasco on the line once again.
What's up?
Gentlemen,
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here. And of course, our cyber overlord, who I think is currently battling the hackers that keep trying to take down the LOTP website. It's probably the Beasts of the Bay, or some other lesser Magic club, like they all are, trying to combat
Some rival club.
some rival.
Shots fired
It's probably
already,
like
Carter.
just like Ben and the quote unquote librarians of Lang, which is of course just him.
There's an old pro wrestler named One Man Gang, and that's Ben, the One Man Gang.
But yeah, thanks
Battle
for
you
thanks
anywhere. Battle you on the interwebs. I'll battle you IRL. I'll battle you over cockatrice. Bring it on. Let's go.
Oh man, that's such a great segue into our coverage of the second edition of the Quarantine Cup. Touched on it last time. We've made our way to the end of the batch pairings, as we'll call them, and I don't believe the top four has been announced yet, but I believe there's at least one member of this group who's quite live for it. And I'm sure we'll touch on several aspects, but to me, the story of the Quarantine Cup, without a doubt, is Mr. Etter's sterling 4-0 record with a deck
That is amazing, dude.
that contains, let's just say, more than our standard 60 cards.
You 4-0'd with that thing, dude?
Oh yes.
All right, so I'm going to read
man.
you all the text of an enchantment, a blue
Holy-
enchantment.
Holy shuffle advantage. Holy digital shuffle advantage. Because if it were me shuffling that, I would have like a clump of 25 lands somewhere
Oh my
in the
God.
middle.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, it just, you next leveled it in so many ways, right? Because, like, okay, so we are, of course, talking about the enchantment Battle of Wits, 3 blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 200 or more cards in your library, you win the game. And Edders, of course, completely next leveled it by playing this deck on Cockatrice, thereby subverting all of the awful logistical requirements that this deck normally involves, such as the shuffling or the presenting the 200 cards left in your deck to your opponent when you're announcing that you're about to win. Because I would fucking make you do that. I would say, "Oh, really?
Count
Let's see
them out.
'em. Oh, you've got 200? Go ahead and show me."
Yeah, I mean, this deck was my dream. As soon as we started playing middle school, I started brewing lists. I had an Esper list. I had this all-in tutor list, and like, I just couldn't bring myself to the dexterity aspect of it. I mean, I was thinking, okay, if I get like a shoebox with like a bag on top, I could just like shake the box.
Just
and,
like a salad, like you shake the whole thing. Like
Yeah,
there's some ranch
but-
dressing in there.
You know,
Nice
obviously, huge aesthetic ding if you try to do something like that. So I don't know, it just takes the pleasure out of it. So as soon as I realized I could subvert all that by right-click shuffle, it unlocked the whole thing. So I settled on a 5-color build, all the fetches, bunch of tutors, and it's just like a 5-color good stuff deck with Battle Wits. So I've got a bunch of screenshots too of some of the fun things that happened. I don't know. It was a blast. It was so much fun to play. So one combo, Navariel's Disc Academy Rector, pretty sweet.
That's great.
Control the board, get your Battle Wits in play, untap and win.
Oh, you just get to wrath them, untap and win. Yeah,
Yep.
that's great.
So how many tutors are in this thing?
Yeah, let's start
I mean,
there.
it's fully stocked.
So I had a list that had about 40 tutors in it, and it was 2 all-in. It was two glass cannon. The final build here ended up, so the main tutor, like the piece de resistance, is Wild Research, which is a enchantment from Apocalypse, costs 2 in a red. You can search your library for an enchantment and then put it in your hand and then discard a card at random. Or you can search your library for, I believe, sorcery and put that card in your hand and discard it. So it's basically a repeatable gamble effect. So you just gamble up your whatever you want over and over again. That was the biggest one. Then there's like intuition. I got some burning wishes, cunning wishes. I think that's about it.
You got rid of the Grim Tutors?
Got rid.
No, they're in there.
Are they?
Down by sorcery, row 2 on the left.
So
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't get that file
Looking
open.
through
you
a
can't really
Dead Sea
memorize
Scroll,
it.
but
Yeah, so there's Grim Tutors in here, and there's a Grim Tutor on the board, I believe.
There is.
You can wish for it. Yeah.
You can tutor for a tutor. It's pretty good.
Tyler, I'll
Yep.
say my favorite screenshot that you posted. You had an academy director on board, and you had just intuition for 3 Cabal therapies. And I saw that, and I was like, "Oh my god, Tyler, you're an absolute
you'll
madman."
never
That is
stop me
so
now.
What a
good.
monster.
Yeah, and I also had a Birds of Paradise in play. So first made sure to clear the way of the Birds of Paradise, and then Rector for the win.
I remember playing against you, and I was just surprised by how well playing through Cockatrice was. I thought that was a very that's a very clever response to having left all your Magic cards in Chicago, and I thought it was preferable to some people's webcam setups. I mean, it was great.
Tyler, can you just kind of set up how you came on that system? And I mean, it was born of necessity, correct?
Correct. So I'm quarantining in California right now. My collection was in Illinois. And then when I had my mom go back to my place to water my plants and take my plants home, I also had to grab my Magic cards in case the world descends into looting and whatever. I wanted to make sure my cards were safe.
Makes sense.
Got to.
So I don't have my cards with me. And the first QC Cup, I just really sheepishly kind of muted the channel. I'm like, oh, I guess I don't get to play Magic ever again. And then, yeah, I was really sad. So then I was experimenting with Cockatrice. I was like, maybe this can work, like if people are down with this. So what you can do is you can do a 1-player local game, which is basically just Goldfish mode. It's for testing your deck and make sure it works. And then with certain of the video conferencing softwares out there, you can only share a portion of your screen. So I use Zoom, and you can just share the top portion of your screen, which only your opponent will see your board, but you still see your hand, and then you can see your opponent's webcam. So it's a good digital to physical interface for Magic cards.
Yeah. Explain, you were able to update the arts, right? The old school art or the middle school art.
Yeah, it
Exactly.
requires
You
a
have to
little
go
work
through
to
and
get it.
turn off every set from
Yeah.
2020 to 2001 or
Yeah.
whatever, and you're golden.
Yeah, because when we were playing for the Dom's rotisserie chicken thing, you had those, it was just like rancid modern versions of all the
Right,
cards,
I know.
except for Firestorm Phoenix, which we punted on.
Yeah, so needless to say, I'm pretty salty because I went 4-0 with middle school and then 0-4 playing the champs list in old school. So there's no way I'm in the top 8. But
Yeah, I feel like so Carter and I, we both started out 1-3 in old school and then proceeded to 4-0 middle school.
Damn, son.
So
we were all like our collective crew was racking up a lot of middle school wins. Who was soaking up all those losses?
There's
should we
plenty other
name
chumps
names?
out there,
Not
man.
Are we going to call people out now?
Ian, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Ian hasn't chimed in yet.
Yeah, I've lost a few games.
Oh boy.
Respectable losses. I think you lost to Alan, right?
Yeah, this time around I lost to Alan, and I still
Alan's
have one
deck
more to
is-
go, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to win.
His
Gotcha.
deck was so sick this time, though. Like I watched his match with Carter.
Oh, Alan's? Yeah.
And Alan's
Yeah.
just doing so much fun stuff.
That's a hell of a deck. Yeah, he was definitely the good guy, I
Was
would
he on
say.
a survival list?
I'm
again?
never really a good guy. He's sort of on a survival list where it's like survival plus like Masticore and Metalworker and things that get you get cards back. So you're getting your squee back, and you're using, I think, Glory. No, that's not Glory. It's a green card. You can pay 3 and return a creature from your graveyard to your hand. Genesis. So he's looping a lot of these creatures and then producing a bunch of big mana with Metalworker, so he can recast Manticores that he's getting back from the graveyard. So it's a really tight list, and it's pretty good, especially when I'm playing Pox, and I just don't draw. Like discard isn't very effective against him.
No, it's not. I cut mine
like at all,
board,
and
like
most of my deck is discard, and then all my creature removal just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I saw his testing version of that deck. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool deck, and he also plays Pox, so he knows how to play around himself.
Yeah,
which doesn't help.
Yeah.
I also played against Raja, but I beat him. He was playing taking turns.
Also,
a so sick.
Supremely sick deck.
Oh my god. We had a really fun game.
There's how many copies of that Time Walk effect, that 5-mana Time Walk effect? Are there 3 copies of it?
Time
3
Warp.
or 4, plus he has Time Warp. He has like 2 of the ones from Portal.
The Portal 3 Kingdoms one.
Yeah.
And then I think, but then he also has like 4 Time Spirals to shuffle them all back and redraw them.
I need to get that in my Battle of Wits deck.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
At least one to wish for.
Oh, that'd be
so good.
Witch Time Walk.
Yeah. It was really cool. I've played hundreds of games against modern taking turns, so I'm pretty familiar with that deck.
Miserable.
It's not.
You've played hundreds of games against that deck? Why?
Yeah. Well, my friend Paul, that was the deck he decided to build after Eldrazi Winter.
That's so horrid. That's
that version is much more putrid than what.
It's much more putrid. But, and I played Tron, and it was a mess.
You guys have awful taste.
I am
just making yourselves miserable.
Well, we covered this the last time they were on. They were just like filthy, rotten modern players that we're trying to put them on the right path.
I mean, I like modern, but like, I don't know, play a fucking Tarmogoyf for something. Like, what are you doing?
I mean, I play Pox. What do you expect?
Nobody plays Tarmogoyf anymore, and it makes me really upset because that card is such a wonderful. Well, you know, if we're going to play modern, I like Tarmogoyf a lot. But I mean, I also know how to win games with green creatures, Carter.
Yeah. I can't. Oh my God, Ian, I'm going to tell the story of our match in old school, which was so insane. I get you game 1, and then game 2, you're dead on board. You've got a card in hand. You draw for turn. You go Winds of Change. Shuffle my 1 card and draw your graveyard is full of like Ancestral, Lotus, Tutor, like all this insane shit, and then you shuffle your deck and the card you peel off the top is fucking Wheel of Fortune, your goddamn 1 outer, and then you end up taking me down game 3 too. I'm like, this motherfucker just punked me out so bad.
I had 2 cards in hand, a Winds of Change and a card. And I Winds of Change and got Winds of Change, and I had 3 cards. And
did you win twice? To
2, and then I win twice, and then I Winds of Change again when I had 1 and got the wheel, and was like, I am the luckiest person alive.
You did me so dirty there.
Always play to your outs, baby.
Yeah, I guess that's why when you play the deck, you just keep random cards in your hand, right? Like I've had that experience because I've been playing a lot of the deck lately. And there's definitely been times where I've been rewarded by just not playing that land or not playing that Mox, and then whoop, the recall comes right off the top.
Yeah.
So it's probably the same thing with you. It's like, yeah, I don't really need, my 6 land in play because it just makes my. I mean, I think you probably have to think about that a lot while playing the deck, right?
Yeah, it really depends because I mean sometimes you turn one like Lotus plus some Dark Rituals and a land, and you're able to Underworld Dreams and then Time Twister someone. And other times it's like I've mulled twice, I have 2 mana, and a Howling Mine. I guess I keep. Here we go.
Here we go.
Living that combo life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah. It reminds me of Paradoxical Outcome and Vintage, except not as good and no Force of Will.
Way less good.
But just as fun.
Yeah, it's definitely fun for sure.
So I think the second round ends tomorrow, and we'll probably do top 4 this weekend. So by the time we have the next gathering here, we should be able to proclaim who the winner is.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, it's me.
Sure, Moss. I mean, if not, you can always just, rig the die roll and get the door prize again, right?
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I am rooting for you, but that would just be a lie. We might, although I would rather you win than like one of these out of towners who we invited win. That's
Yeah,
sure.
we did bring a couple of guests in this time. Case and Nick and Derek, and Alan is doing a second one. I guess I thought that was a good idea, given that all of these spring and summer events that we were going to do, like Kumite and Bootlegger Ball, are punted indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they'll still be had at some point. Maybe it's just they're skipped this year, or who knows, maybe they move to an online format, or events in general. I'm not saying anything about them in particular, but maybe events in the future may have a more online component.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, we've shown it's doable here with Quarantine Cup, or for example, NoobCon did a 1-day online extravaganza. So
the stream of that was so good, by the way, so well put together.
Yeah.
Whoever it was that was managing all of the. Yeah, that was.
It's a lot of logistics. I mean, but once you figure it out, you figured it out, right? And so then you could duplicate it.
Yeah, it's just such a clever idea of there being these like little rooms, like the Werribee rooms is like, that's table 1, that's table 2. Yeah. I checked in on a couple of Danny's games before I got bored watching him play Twiddle Ball. On the topic of webcam tournaments, which will be the main topic of the podcast, probably added for
the rest of the years at least.
Our own Tyler Edders had a deep run in the Team Serious Invitational. Where Team Serious are just an absolute aces group of Magic players based out of Cleveland, who are the I would say the progenitors of middle school, the people who brought the tablet to the Holy Land, where it was made into a religion. And they also play a bunch of vintage. These invitationals are streamed by Team Serious, and the invitation was extended. It was a little less selective this time around, so they let old Edders sneak in, much to their chagrin.
They lowered the bar far enough. No, I'm just teasing. Did you do the cockatrice thing for their tournament as well?
Oh yeah.
Excellent.
So it was
that's awesome. They let you do that.
Yeah, it was really cool. I actually tried to back out earlier on because they made the announcement like, hey, we've got rooms for everything. You just jump in the Discord room, and that's where it's going to be. And I was like, hey man, like it was Nat that put the whole thing on. I was like, man, like I'm just gonna like drop out. Like I don't want to be like that guy that like makes everybody download a different piece of software to make this thing run. He's like, no, dude, like, let's see if we can make it work. So he talked to a few people, and there's actually some other people there in similar situations as myself. And we all just sort of collectively jumped in, and we had like an ad hoc like help channel going throughout the day to help people get set up and running with everything. There's 24 players. We had, how many lords were there? I think Bob was there, and myself, Sam, sort of an honorary lord. And
did Nathan play?
Who am I forgetting? Who?
Did Nathan play?
Who?
Who?
No.
Who's on first?
That reminds me of the Danny Who.
Oh yeah.
That was like
Danny?
That was like pretty early into the podcast.
Yeah.
The Danny Who. That was so
But
good.
anyways, like as the day went on, it ended up being a pretty beautiful display of how anarchy can work. I mean, there was people just, some people were playing with paper, some people were playing with cockatrice. Some people like Discord was crashing halfway through. Brassman was casting it on Twitch, and he was just like, hey, does anybody have links? Like I'd like throw a link to my Zoom and Discord, and he'd like bring that up on the stream. So we were just like turtles all the way down of like screen sharing and different pieces of technology mixing together.
Yeah.
There was one of my matches that my opponent couldn't download Zoom for some reason, so he just loaded his deck into Cockatrice, and then I made a game on the server, and then we played that way. So it was just really cool to see how like a bunch of like, who knew it, like 24 like smart Magic players could organize around and make all this stuff happen in real time. And it was a really, really fun, well-run event.
Well, as they say, life finds a way.
Life finds a way.
That's sweet. And it looks like you're playing an outcome deck.
Yeah, so this was just Yama Killer's list from last weekend. He won the Vintage Challenge with it. I caught part of his stream, and he was just having like a ton of fun. He was like, I don't know, I think this is good. Draw cards? Sure, that sounds great. So I just copied his exact 75 because it looked like a blast. So playing Luris and PO. The Storm WinCon is Sprite Dragon, which is a new printing from Ikoria.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1 red, 1 blue. It's a 1/1 flying haste. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Cards are real good.
So it's just a little
It's a big
beater.
boy.
Yeah, and you just land that and outcome, play a bunch of Moxes, swing for 12, and then you're winning.
You're not even playing a Mentor. That's insane.
No mentor.
You're playing this dragon instead because it just kills them on that turn.
Yeah, it's too slow.
Yep.
That's wild. I love it.
So I'm not a vintage specialist by any means. I think the format's a blast. I had a really good time. I'm sure Luris is going to get the axe pretty
I think
soon.
it did already,
and
didn't it?
Did it?
Did it?
Probably.
I thought they were announced
I don't
until
know.
Monday.
Yeah, I think the announcement is on the 18th or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had so much fun. I like every single game felt like a game. Like they felt like vintage are supposed to feel. You know, it was misstepping and time walking and power. Like every turn was just like these intricate dances around each other. There was no like total lockout games. So I thought it was great. I don't know. It'd be fun if it stuck around longer than a week or two, but I think other people have strong differing opinions to that.
So I think this is an interesting one too, because I know I've seen on Twitter a little bit, there are a couple of advocates for really, like, they really hate Companion as part of Vintage. And they're able to kind of form these opinions because there's been so much of it on Moto leading up to this now. So like there is this sort of weird new thing that's happening where we might see cards get banned in paper before they even have a chance to really exist in a paper deck, may never even get played in like a paper Vintage tournament because that time just might never even come.
Yeah.
And
yeah, interesting.
And I'm curious because, again, you know, Tyler, obviously you played a Luris deck, and I'm sure you played other decks playing Luris. I know you even saw one of the guys playing like Lutri with like a Luris sideboard transformation thing.
Yeah.
So obviously you had fun with it. Do you think that was like, do you think it was too much of that for the format? Do you think that was more than it should have been?
Yeah, I really can't speak to that because I don't play a lot of Vintage. I'm just sort of like a dumb heel when it comes to Vintage. Like I'll show up and like I'll sit down across from you and you'll think I kind of know what I'm doing, but I really don't. I'm just sort of there for you to beat me. I just have fun playing Vintage. There's a lot of other people that are like much more highly opinionated and know the format better that could probably answer that better than me, but I had a great time. All the decks I played, all my opponents were on some type of Companion. I think they were all Luris, except what was the one you just said? I don't even know their names. Intri?
Oh, Lutri, yeah.
Lutri, yeah. Yeah, that was Jimmy. He blew my mind. So his main deck was Lutri and then transformational sideboard into Luris. I just think it's cool. I think it just totally adds like a new flavor to the format. And it's really interesting because it gives you information about what's in their deck, because obviously Companions have these criteria on them. So you know, okay, he's playing Luris. He can't have X card in his deck anymore because it costs more than 2. I think it's fun.
Interesting. If there was a card in Old School that said, if there's like an Old School Companion that said, you can't play with Ancestral Recall, but this is a 3-mana 4/4, would you play it? It's in your hand every game, right? So it's like an 8th card in your hand. It can't be balanced away and mind twisted away. No Ancestral, 3-mana 4/4. Would you play it?
If it's in black.
Is it green?
Wait, what color is
It's
it?
colorless. It's in you can go on any deck.
Every
So
deck.
Carter, if that's the case, we just played in our green decks because we don't play Ancestral anyway.
Well, yeah, we should be rewarded for sure.
I'd rather have the cards, but that's just me.
And mono black, that would be great.
Yeah, I won't lie. Like, since we've been in a proxy tournament space, and I was actually able to proxy power like more than I had, it's been nice being able to actually cast Ancestral and then regrowth for Ancestral and then recall for regrowth and Ancestral and Time Walking God knows what else.
Yeah.
It's just filth.
Feels pretty good.
It's absolute filth. And as much fun as I have, like cheesing people by like berserking Mishra's factories, it does feel really good to play blue cards.
Yeah, a couple of guys have said, it's really good to play fully powered, fully realized versions, fully actualized versions of their decks. I think Roar said that.
Yeah.
And maybe one or two other folk, but I just wonder if the genie is now out of the bottle. And that's not to try to denigrate proxy play. I mean, I have plenty of unglued lands that I use now and then. My unglued tabernacle.
Workshops, yeah.
My unglued workshops see plenty of use.
Max will always give you a grin and be like, you didn't know they printed this in unglued, did you?
But yeah, I just wonder if and when we come back together in person, if we're going to switch to a more permissive policy on that. Now, once you start, why put it back? You can make a case both ways. I don't know where it's going to end up.
Yeah, I know that's such a pervasive idea. Is like we've made these concessions. Businesses. It's like we've had to change our business model to adapt. When things change, will we just roll the clock back 5 months or like?
I don't think so.
When we start, right? Exactly.
Shit usually doesn't work that way.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. People usually just change and move forward,
Yeah.
and get used to it. So,
or like, what if somebody, if you had a power 9 and you're on hard times and you had to let it go to pay bills or whatever, it's like you should be able to play it, next year. If we get together, I don't know. That's my hot take. I haven't put a whole lot of thought into it, but I mean,
Well, yeah, there's two sides to the hobby. There's like the collecting side, which you as an individual enjoy the pleasure of like owning the cards, and then there's the gathering side, which is you enjoy being a part of the community. And I was reflecting on this. It's like we've long heard that physical possessions don't mean things, right? That it's you can't take it with you or whatever, but what I realized over the past few days was, even though you can't take it with you, what you own is a manifestation of your values. And because it's a manifestation of your values, it allows you to find communities of other people that potentially share those values. So it's different with different things. Like, you can go from yachts to motorcycles to magic cards to whatever you might want to throw in that category. But magic cards, like owning magic cards, introduced me to you all and introduced me to Lords of the Pit and the broader old school community.
Yeah.
And we all have like similar values. So even though it's not specifically about the cards, it's allowed me to find other people that share similar values and an ethos or a philosophy about life. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, man, that's well stated.
Yeah, it's
definitely.
also, you have to wonder, like, so I just finished my undergraduate degree.
Woohoo!
And yeah, it's very
Congrats,
exciting.
bro.
Thank you.
Congrats.
And
Good job, Ian.
to finish one of my majors, my philosophy major, I had to write a big thesis, and my thesis was on defining what is a game, and then doing an analysis on a very particular game. And in that, I was thinking,
Which game did you choose?
I chose the game of Namek, which is a game where the only action in the game is changing the rules of the game
Nice.
and discussing whether that is a game.
I need to check
Very
this out.
meta
Namek,
game.
NAM.
It's purely meta.
NOMIC. It's purely meta.
It's just
It's
all
a lot
about the
of fun.
meta.
Right.
But I was thinking in doing my research for that big paper, do the physical magic cards are they required to play Magic? Because essentially a game is just the rules and the elements of play. But if the rules don't state you have to use Wizards of the Coast printed Magic cards, and our sub community of players has broken away from like Wizards of the Coast play, do we really need to have real cards to play the game, or proxies suffice, since the card really is just the rules of what the card does, not the paper itself.
Yeah, I mean, simply the answer is no. I've long, if I was beamed away to an alien planet, one of my tasks, one of my hobbies would be to recreate the game of Magic, because I think it's the greatest game ever created. It's just so much fun. It's just the best. So I'd start writing down what all the cards do, and you could play the game and still have the same amount of fun. But you lose the aesthetic collector's appeal that I was talking about earlier, which is definitely, it's part of the pleasure of the hobby and of the craft. But
yeah, and that's what makes it the ultimate game, because like for those weird lizard-brained people like myself that have a compulsion to collect
all of Arabian Nights.
Yeah, it just like is raw dopamine to that portion of my brain.
It's interesting though, because like I'll ask you, Moss, because I know you pay like such close attention to that aspect. But when you sit across a screen from somebody else, it for me at least, it just kind of all goes away. Like what edition the card might be in, if it's altered, if you're not actually seeing it, if it's just like on somebody else's screen, I don't know. There's like barely any aesthetics to it, really. To me, well, when I play online, they feel like game pieces. But please.
Yeah, I mean I guess I try to. I'm able to wear both hats. Where it's like if you have a sweet altered Soul Ring, and I'm like, God damn, that looks cool. I want to get, that inspires me to get something done, But also, if it's just, a proxied Soul Ring or what, Soul Ring's a bad example. We'll just say it's a Mox, right? It's just an altered Mox or just a proxied Mox. It's like at that moment, I can still appreciate, I'm kind of like checked more into the gamesmanship side, right? So not everything is a pure aesthetic judgment all the time. Like every now and then something will jump out at me and I'll latch onto that, and it'll inspire me or spark a conversation or whatever. But the base state is just competitive gamesmanship.
And that's the thing for me that's lost with playing with Cockatrice. Like I've been playing it for 2 months now or whatever, and while it's awesome and like it's a lot of fun and I get my fix and like it scratches the itch, I do not get the aesthetic, physical, tactile pleasure of shuffling my deck, holding my cards, organizing my lands how I like to organize my lands. Like simply the physical basic action of tapping a forest to play a Llanowar Elf is extremely pleasurable and releases that dopamine in a way that double clicking on my forest and dragging a Llanowar Elf from my hand onto the battlefield isn't. So does Cockatrice work? Like, sure, but I would much rather be playing at a bar with you guys with an actual sack of cardboard.
Well, that's the ritual, right? You're missing out on that ritualistic element of it.
Right. Our Map Room Sundays are like one of the things I miss the most, because those are some of like the best times I've had with the group. Like just hanging out with the guys at Map Room, like on an early Sunday afternoon, and just, testing middle school, testing old school. Maybe I think 1 week Ray managed to convince the bartender to bring us a round of Malort. That things like that.
Yeah, Ray.
Ray's been incognito for a while.
Well, it's tax season, so he's gone.
That's true. Yeah, he does disappear this time of year.
And that's the fucking tragedy. So can we please just pour one out for Crown? R.I.P. Crown.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Crown Liquors.
Yeah.
So sad.
Crown, our favorite haunt.
So many good memories.
Cultural institution.
Yeah.
That place. Okay. Always a good place to go. Good cocktails, good table room, good vibes.
Yeah.
Neo Beat played there. Like, God, I'm gonna miss that place.
So Crown was that place where, I moved here and I'm like, holy shit, this place is like 60 yards from my front door. I can and did literally stumble home from there many times.
Yeah.
Like it was, it's a good spot. I'm sure something will go back in there. It may not be Crown. It may be a new Crown. It could be something else. Who knows? But I think that space will fill up eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Eventually we'll all be dead. I don't know. But I hear you, dude. That one, when Crown said they weren't coming back, I'm like, well, here it goes. It's like, and a lot of places are going to be like that. Crown's, not going to be the last. They are probably the first among our haunts, but
yeah, it's true.
You just got to get ready for it because times are going to be a changing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, shit, that got morose as fuck. But I mean, it's important to remember those things, and not acknowledge these things as they happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just important to mourn. I mean, it's part of the process,
Exactly.
We have to acknowledge the things that were given to us and let go of them freely, but you can't just pretend it didn't matter to you, because Crown to me was a symbol, it was like, it's kind of like Demon or Map Room, or it was like one of the Lords of the Pit, like, this is our fucking turf, man, and like this is our shit, and like it's personal now, fucking coronavirus, like, for sure. It's fucking personal.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I had a lot of good times at that place even before I joined the Lords of the Pit. It's crazy. It's very sad. But moving on. Moss, you and me, we had a conversation about this on my stoop when you dropped off a couple heaters at my place, because I'm planning some big things for a little tournament of my own. But this prompts an interesting question. Okay, so I'm referring to an event the Deep Spawners held, which they called a Tier 2 challenge. And it really begs, we kind of struck on this topic a little bit, but it kind of begs the question, like, what does Tier 2 really mean? It's easy for, I could see that being something that gets misinterpreted. Does it mean that your deck still has Ancestor Recall, Mind Twist, but you're not, like, tapping Jayemdae Tomes or playing Ankh's of Mishra or Serendids?
Yeah.
Does it mean that you're playing, like, does it mean you have to play monocolor, or... You know what I mean? Let's try to define this.
Yeah, so just to kind of set the table, Cam asked me to play in this thing that he was putting together via the Deep Spawners. They do weekly battles. And so he said, hey, we're putting together a Tier 2, Tier 3, whatever, don't play the best decks. It's more about just having fun and crazy brews and all this stuff. So I'm like, well, what do you really mean by Tier 2? Like, I get like, I like how these guys are like, yeah, we'll just let Moss fucking ramble for a couple minutes and we're going to go take a piss. That's all right. I can feel air, but so where was I? Even lost my train of thought there. All right. So we're back to the Tier 2 thing. So it's like, well, what does Tier 2 mean? I understand it means I'm not going to play the deck. I'm not going to play ATOG. I'm not going to play like Wonder Bread. I'm not going to play Grixis Trolls, but like, or, an Esper Shops list or White Weenie or Black Rack, and there's probably a few other quote Tier 1, the stuff you would expect to see in a prototypical top 8.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, well, what about like just decks that are good, but not your prototypical top 8 decks, like a Eureka deck or Mono Brown Urzatron, or the deck that I played, which was the 93-94 All Hallows Eve Reanimator deck. Mm-hmm. So like you would say in a tournament, like in a Lords of the Pit tournament field, you would say, oh yeah, that's clearly Tier 2, 2.5. It's a pretty weak strategy. It's easy to disrupt. But like in an event where the expectations of what is Tier 2 and 3 are a bit more muddled, it did feel very overpowered. And that was just by virtue of using a complete set of Power 9, Demonic Tutor, Regrowth, Recall. Actually, I don't think I had Recall, but you know what I mean. It's just like the average power level was very high, and the deck just won by, and it had Bizarre Baghdad, right? So the deck just won by drawing tons of cards. And then like the actual mechanism I used to win is kind of irrelevant because I'm just seeing so many cards. It could be anything. It could just be a giant fireball. And so some of the brews ended up being a little bit more on the janky stew end. Like there was a control deck that was trying to like do a Gauntlet of Chaos to give me a Sorrow's Path to then use an Icy Manipulator to tap it. You know what I mean? Like really weird creative stuff. Or I think there was a couple Power Surge decks, or there was at least one Power Surge deck. Park, you remember Park?
Of course.
Carter, he came to visit a couple months back,
Yeah.
which seems like a year ago now. God. But he was playing that.
Yeah, that was a blast.
He was playing like the green. What's that? Green druid that turns your forests into 2/3s.
Oh,
druid.
Yeah, that's the.
It's the Fallen Empires.
Oh, the
druid.
Fallen Empires guy. Oh
Yeah.
God, I think I own 4 copies of this card.
Sick.
Of course you do, Carter.
Well,
So-
I mean, I'm a card carrying druid after all.
Yeah. So he was playing, like a land attack deck. So it got me thinking. So it's like so I would consider my list, a prototypical tier 2 list, but in that setting, it did feel a little bit overpowered. But I wouldn't change a single card in it because the Reanimator deck doesn't work unless you're able to draw all these cards. So it's kind of a weird catch-can type scenario. Like I could easily just punt out Ancestral Recall. That's fine. And whatever, but it's like, I don't know. Anyways, the deck ended up doing 3-1, but the records didn't really matter because we just took a vote, or I should say Cam just ruled by fiat that Park won whatever the prize was. I forget what the top prize.
That's cool.
But his deck was sick. He had it all, not all of it, but he had a significant portion of it altered to have like an Endor Star Wars Ewok theme. I think you can see that on Twitter or wherever, somewhere out in the internet. It was a fun event.
I agree with your definition.
It got me thinking really philosophical. I mean, I was teasing Cam where I'm like, well, I'm going to play the best fucking thing I can, Cam, just so I can ball you, But then like once I actually got into it and thinking about it a little bit, it's like, well, what is tier 2? That doesn't really mean anything. It's not, how do you define these things?
I would think a tier 2 deck is one, even if powered, isn't very consistent.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a deck with power that tries to win in a kind of like inconsistent or non-conventional way.
Yeah, like my Underworld Dreams Arborea Turbofog deck, powered, isn't good. It still isn't good.
That might not be.
What about just Underworld Tricks? Just like a prototypical Grixis Tricks deck.
Yeah, 2, 100%.
Yeah. But that deck would have felt in that given environment. I think that would have been too powerful.
So
I don't know.
I actually have this question then, because obviously one thing that we've seen as a challenge in brewing in just like the general scope of old school is how much are you brewing when you still have like 20 something restricted cards in your deck between power and like detutor, regrowth,
absolutely,
all that good stuff. So would a tier 2 deck necessarily have a limit, like a sort of barrier for how many restricted cards you could play before it starts to get too powerful?
Yeah. Well, you're kind of thinking along the lines of brew points a little bit, where you're allocated a certain number of points, and you can like Ancestral Recall's worth X points, Lotus is worth Y, and so you're able to control the power level, and it's kind of, I mean, that's something maybe we could think about trying in some small way, because it'd be fun to have that really hard. I mean, you're still able to brew, but you have to allocate and choose how you're going to spend those resources. It's kind of a different way to think about it.
Yeah, I find it very fun to use power to glue some kind of bad card combinations together, as opposed to like leaving out these very iconic cards like Ancestral Balance, Mind Twist. They just feel they're like so much a part of the game that I don't know. I think it's to me more interesting to try to win unconventionally than to try to like play, I don't know, some sort of like limited looking deck with without the power. I don't know. Old school without the power is just like kind of whack to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm just too used to it. I can't give it up.
I just think everyone should start with, it's like
just hand them a power 9 when they walk into the player.
Yeah, like everyone gets a.
Here's your unglued power 9.
Because I would get against it too.
You get a Lotus, and you get a Lotus.
I mean, I won't lie. Like I kind of like tiptoed into power with the Q Cup. So like the first one, I was playing my regular green black Berserk deck, and all I proxied was a Lotus just to see like how that worked out. And of course, game one, round one, I draw Lotus and I play a turn one Urnum Gen on my opponent. So it was like, okay, yep, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And this last one, you know, I played, you know, pretty much fully powered with a bunch of the other restricted cards, and I had this whole like weird bait and switch thing with Titania's Song into like a bug like creature list with berserks and stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, like, obviously, like, you know, would I prefer to continue playing with Ancestral and Time Walk and, you know, all those other things? Yeah, of course, because it's just the amount of power you have there, like, you know, power is it's noticeable. Like it's very noticeable.
Yeah.
But, you know, do I feel like, you know, that takes away from the time when I was playing entirely unpowered, where like the only restricted cards I really had were like Regrowth and Chaos Orb at, you know, my first old school tournament. Like, I don't necessarily think that takes away from that experience either, because, you know, everyone has their own form of fun, and it is still like, when you've lived without it, it's still fine. Like, it's still, you know, interesting games. It's still like fun. And we talked about this the last time that we were on Pit, was being the underdog is kind of fun sometimes.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I definitely see what you mean. You're the baby face, they're the heel, to continue Nick's metaphor.
Yeah.
I don't know. When you said a tier 2 tournament, I was thinking, well, that just means any deck you would consider in normal old school tier 1, you cross off.
Yeah, I'm being a little bit fast and loose with tournament. I mean, it was paired. It was paired, but it wasn't. I mean, I don't know how much of a tournament it was. It was pretty non-standard, shall we say. I think I don't know that it was like actually if the pairings actually corresponded with wins and losses, or if Cam was just like, here's another random assortment of pairings, you know, because it didn't matter, because whoever the rounds didn't matter. It was going to be 4 rounds, and then we were going to have a vote at the end of who had the sickest brew, you know. So,
but the philosophy is an old school event where you don't see like the same old, and I think people have been trying to answer this question for years now. Like, what's the best way to do that?
And in that respect, I think the event was a success, because it was all weird shit. Some of it, you know, extremely strange to the just things you might see at the mid card table, you know, at a old school.
Yeah,
event.
that's actually interesting. Like maybe the whole thing is like sort of self-correcting. Like, yes, as you explained, there's kind of like a disparity in power if you just say tier 2, but it does solve a lot of problems by itself, where it's like, well, at least you pretty much know what not to play.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't need like banned lists or, you know, brew points. It's like, just say tier 2 and like people eventually figure out what you mean. Kind of cool.
So that's interesting you say that, because what I saw happen, this happened in middle school, right when we started, was I feel like middle school's meta was very self-correcting. You know, I think right out the gate we saw things like Goblins is a really stupidly powerful deck. Psychotog was very powerful. The Blue-Green Madness deck was super powerful. But I almost never see those. Yeah, Standstill. And short of like Lil Greg playing that and, you know, being the wretched person that he is, I don't see that as frequently anymore. Like I've only seen like maybe like, well, Lorian playing like some of these decks lately. Like he played Goblins in this last Quarantine Cup, and he's played Blue-Green with like Survival previously. So like, you know, I feel like that's a format that is very self-correcting too, where like even like the most powerful decks that we identify, people just naturally are kind of going away from, because they want to explore it more and they want to kind of see that change happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And
easier to afford.
You add to that we're not playing for fucking money or points or planeswalker points, RIP.
Yeah.
It's
my God.
So even if there is a best deck, since you're not incentivized to always win, you're incentivized to, I don't know, have fun. You find some weird pet card and then you brew a deck around it, and it's like, it's hilarious and it's great and you have a good time. So we're like back to what a game's supposed to be, which is playing just for fun, not playing for the outcome of it.
I do want to touch on something that you just briefly mentioned there, Tyler, which is that Planeswalker points are now disappearing at, I think, the end of this month.
Yep.
And it was interesting. I know I personally, I went kind of in a little like stroll down memory lane through my account, and I found out I had played against two lords in, I think it was 2017 in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, this is great.
Mr. Tyler Edders.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
That's so incredible. I have a vague, like, dim axon firing in my brain of that memory. I think I was playing some wretched Grixis Delver deck, and I want to say you were on some streamlined, like, creature combo deck.
I was on
But I'm not
Shardless.
sure. Shardless, okay.
I swear to God, you were on like Maverick or like something like in the Death and Taxes family. I can't remember for sure though.
I thought it was Modern. If it was Legacy, it was 100%
Legacy, yeah.
Death and Taxes. Yeah, it was Death and Taxes for sure.
So I remember because I had just gone off my bye and back then because I was a fucking grinder sweat hog. I had a Planeswalker points based buy for that tournament. So like I had been able to go get breakfast and just go hang out for a little bit. I remember coming to the table. And I vaguely remember Tyler. I remember you more from like another tournament we were at. I think at Nerd Rage or something. Awesome. I think it was a Legacy tournament where you would just like Colgan's commanded me out of the game.
Oh, that's great.
But no,
I love Legacy. I love traveling for Magic. It's so much fun, and like those games, like so. You came in off a bye. I didn't have a bye. That clearly means that I had won my first couple rounds or whatever. So that's awesome. But Legacy's great, and like traveling to Magic's great. And fuck,
that'll come back, man. That'll come back, man.
Well,
yeah,
eventually. Eventually.
I don't know.
Of course,
man.
baby.
I think that back at that time, what I see now in old school is what I saw in Legacy, which was just like. It felt like a community where the people who played it for the most part were people who were in it for the love of the game because they really they loved the format and they loved the interactions that happened, and I felt that so like that resonated with me so much. It was like I'm here because I really love playing this format, and even if my deck wasn't the most ideal for that day, it didn't really matter because I was still having fun.
Yeah, I would travel really far just for Legacy because it was the only way to play it. It was the only way to get my fix, and it was through Legacy that I found Lords of the Pit. It was like what was the group used to be called? It was like
it's called Chicago and Milwaukee Old School and Vintage. I thought was
somehow
the original.
I got sucked into that. Because there was like a Legacy thing that you all did or something, and that's how I found this community. So.
Oh yeah. It started with Legacy Night at the MTG Card Market. Mm-hmm. Okay. I would play, and Dom would play, and Shane would play, Mullen would play.
Who?
he who shall
not. That's such a good bit. I love that. Holy crap.
It's really funny because he doesn't listen to this, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, is he like Jaco though, where he says he doesn't listen but then still listens and then drops off like 4 paragraphs of critiques in the Discord? And also the song you chose at minute 2 went on for a little too long. But not that I listen or anything.
Oh my God.
Everybody's a critic, dude. Everybody's a critic.
I'm open to criticism, man. It's all good.
But yeah, I mean, like, I feel like similar, like I started digging back into my memory now, and I'm thinking about how many cool things happened in that tournament.
Wait, who was the other Lord you played? So Tyler and who else?
Some weird dude with a mustache. And,
is it he who shall not be named?
Yeah, that one. He was playing Storm, the usual. And I think I remember more. I started to like get this image again of that person in my head after we started thinking about it more. And then what I remembered the most was actually a very odd story that happened with my opponent right after I played him. So that opponent was on, I believe, like the Blue-Black Reanimator list. And he crushed me in about all of like 6 or 7 minutes. And super friendly guy. I think he was from maybe he might have been local. He may have been from California. I don't remember anymore. But anyway, we're like, well, he's like, I'm kind of hungry. I'm like, is there somewhere good to eat? So I'm like, yeah, of course. There's North Market right across the street. So, we walk over together and we, chit chat a little bit, and we find the Polish restaurant. And he's like, well, I'm not that hungry. Do you want to split this kielbasa with me? I'm like, oh, sure, why not? I'll share
just met you.
With you. And we
I just met you,
the convention center. And somehow this ends. And it's like he's like, I might be back in Chicago sometime. Here's my phone number. Maybe we can meet up or something. So in that day, I met two lords, shared a sausage with a complete stranger, and got his phone number.
I've had worse first dates.
And just to round the story out, on that day, on that fateful day in Columbus, Ohio, me, Tyler Edders, I lost to David Velasco. It appears I lost 2-0 or 0-2.
Did you just pull up the?
Yeah, I just pulled it up. So yeah, that's something else we'll do. All you planeswalkers out there, there's a script on GitHub that lets you download all of your planeswalker history as a CSV. So we'll link down the show notes for you. It takes like
good idea.
30 seconds. Really important to preserve the history. I don't know. It's a lot of fun. You know, like I scrolled through too. I went all the way back to my first. I lost my original DCI number and I had to remake a second one. And that was in 2005. So I was at the ripe age of 17. And that was at Pastimes. And I think it was like the Kamigawa block something. And yeah, I think like the secret lead underneath this whole Planeswalker points thing going away is GDPR, which is the new Data Privacy Acts. So like the fact that you could look up your opponent's literal names is no longer kosher in the 21st century. So
Correct.
That's, I think, why this has to go away.
Even if you look at them now, like a lot of the names have already disappeared from there. When I remember a long time ago, there was actually a website that would let you copy your whole Planeswalker history and then see your match record overall over like several years against all of your opponents. But it only worked because literally every single name that was registered for a DCI number would still appear in full there, so they could tear them up very easily.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so funny because like the assumption is that it would be like kind of sinister, but then everyone just looks back on these things with just like sweet nostalgia, you know? Like there's no malice
like, dude,
whatsoever.
I played you 5 years ago before I was friends with you. That's so cool. Like you beat me. Like what the fuck?
That's what we're using the data for, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not to fucking fish you and like convince your wife that you're having an affair and then subvert your bank account. Fuck.
But no, I mean like for sure, like traveling to places like Columbus, I loved going to Columbus. I remember going to an Eternal weekend there one year that was probably one of the best, like most fun tournaments I've been to in a long time. And then, going, I think I went to my first ever Star City Invitational there because I had just somehow barely made the cut on points. And I was playing this like garbage Teamer Planeswalker deck in Standard. And just, it was, but a lot of good memories in the Columbus Convention Center.
Yep, me too. Every single event for like 4 or 5 years there, everything, Wisconsin, St. Louis, Columbus, Pittsburgh, like it felt like every month I was going out somewhere different. And it's so funny because I can like sort of picture all the convention centers, but then as soon as I go to one, it's like, oh yeah, this place. Yeah. Bathrooms are around the corner and the shitty hot dogs are right down there.
I was especially upset when the Culvers at the mall next to the Milwaukee Convention Center closed because there were very few options after that.
Damn. I know that's a reason to go to Wisconsin by itself.
It is.
Get
you really have to drive over the border. I mean, for me now, there's actually one right down the street from me, like literally like 2 miles east of me. There is a Culver's next to a Piggly Wiggly. If that
hell yeah.
If that clues you into how close I am to Wisconsin, is that there is a Piggly Wiggly near me.
That's like so Wisconsin.
I was just gonna say you fucking outed yourself.
Yeah, really.
Cheesehead.
Close to the cheddar curtain, my friend.
Yeah.
You're as north as you can still be and be in Illinois.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, we had one more topic, which was middle school singleton, but let's punt on that because we can just punt that to the next time. And
yeah, maybe we can get some data by then.
Yeah, it's still kind of coming together, so I don't want to get ahead of my skis on that anyway. So more to be revealed. We'll have that as a teaser for the next one. We don't usually do a teaser. Just a little tease.
Ooh, leave the episode off with a cliffhanger.
Yeah, yeah. All right, boys. I think that's enough for one evening.
Agreed. It was a damn pleasure. Thank you all for joining us. We will get you back on again shortly, of course.
This was
Thank
great.
you for having us. It was nice to see you guys again. I know,
yeah.
Moss, we were talking, we've somehow managed to miss each other in pairings the past 2 tournaments.
I know. 16 pairings, and we've.
That's fortunate for Mr. Moss.
We're avoiding the Wizards. Man.
Yeah, my track record against mono green is not good, my dude. Especially when it has Gaia's Avengers in the fucking main, and I'm trying to play a 2-drop forest with my Felwar Stone and turning his dude into a 7/7.
Bro, you almost had a sterling record this time. But not entirely.
Not
The
entirely.
Dream Crusher,
Yeah.
Dr. Velasco.
Yeah.
Oh, this was Carter's fault this time. I wasn't playing mono green in OS. This was Carter's fault.
Yeah, this time was my arch nemesis.
I didn't get many wins in old school, but let's just say
Damn it, you got 2.
some count more than others, my
God
friend.
damn it. Not all wins are created equal.
Oh
And
my
with that, I wish you all a good night.
Peace.
See you next time.
Farewell.
See you guys.